Hey everyone, I'm Dustin Davis. Let's get into everything happening in Detroit right now. Detroit's front office enters a pivotal offseason, carrying questions that could reshape the franchise's competitive window. Multiple roster decisions loom, each one testing the balance between financial discipline and on-field ambition, between rewarding present performance and preserving future flexibility. The organization faces contract negotiations with key contributors, potential departures of familiar faces, and the urgent need to patch a secondary ravaged by injury. These choices arrive at a moment when playoff positioning remains fragile and the margin for error has all but disappeared. How Detroit navigates these crossroads will determine whether the Lions consolidate their progress or watch their window narrow before it truly opens. Before we dive in, I have a quick request. If you find value in our content, please give us a like. It's a small gesture, but it really helps. Thanks for being awesome. Let's start with the most important contract decision facing Detroit's front office heading into the offseason. At just 23 years old, Gibbs is in the midst of a campaign that should earn him Pro Bowl honors for the third year running, with legitimate All-Pro buzz and possible Offensive Player of the Year consideration trailing close behind. Selected in the first round, he remains under Detroit's control through 2026, and the franchise holds an option that could push that timeline into 2027. Eligibility for a new deal arrives next offseason, eliminating any strategic justification for delay. Jeremy Fowler of ESPN noted on December 10th that when Detroit finally acts, the organization will likely establish a new ceiling for what running backs earn across the league. Fowler was unambiguous in his projection. He's positioned to become the league's highest-paid running back soon enough. He's the deadliest open-field force in the league, getting better by the week, and the Lions keep giving him more in the passing game, 31 targets over the past month. So my sense here is Detroit will push to get Gibbs done. Currently, Saquon Barkley holds the richest running back arrangement in football, a 2-year commitment averaging $20.6 million annually, with approximately $36 million guaranteed. SpotTrack's model pegs Gibbs at that same $20.6 million annual figure, though spread across 3 years rather than 2, a structure that would elevate both total value and guaranteed money beyond Barkley's shorter term. This year, Gibbs has logged 187 carries for 1,062 yards, a 5.7-yard average, and found the end zone 13 times on the ground. Through the air, he's contributed 58 catches for 574 yards and 3 additional scores. A season ago, he paced the entire NFL with 20 total touchdowns, and across his brief career, he's been absent for only 2 of 47 possible regular season contests, a durability record that amplifies his worth. Gibbs is not the only core player whose contract situation demands attention next offseason. 3 additional contributors will require decisions, and 2 of those individuals are currently injured and unavailable for the remainder of the campaign. Fowler suggested Detroit might mirror the approach taken with Aiden Hutchinson: monitor recovery, confirm a return to form, then commit resources. While the Lions plan to reward their stars, not every veteran will be so fortunate when roster decisions arrive this spring. Veterans pursuing expanded roles or enhanced compensation can trigger moves, and clubs occasionally facilitate departures to generate roster flexibility. Under those pressures, one established Lion appears at risk of being released once the season ends. Wide receiver Khalif Raymond has been sidelined for the previous 2 contests with an ankle injury, but returned to limited practice ahead of the December 14th matchup against Matthew Stafford and the Los Angeles Rams. On December 11th, special teams coordinator Dave Feep informed team writer Tim Twentyman that Tom Kennedy will manage kick returns, while Raymond, assuming health, would resume punt return responsibilities. Chris Schad of Detroit Jock City argued on December 11th that Raymond's tenure could be on borrowed time as the Lions prepare for the Rams and potentially some offseason plans. Schad highlights that despite second-team All-Pro recognition as a punt returner, Raymond's effectiveness has slipped. His punt return average has dropped this season, and his offensive involvement has shrunk. Raymond has functioned as a dependable depth receiver and reliable return specialist since arriving in Detroit in 2021, yet his offensive role has contracted from its peak. In 2022, he posted 47 catches for 516 yards, output he hasn't approached since. Shad cautioned, "If anything, Raymond's clock is already ticking, despite Feep's comments, raising the possibility he could be moved in the coming weeks." For the immediate future, the hope is that Raymond heals and contributes against the Rams, but the broader evaluation, weighing special team skill against offensive contribution, younger alternatives, and cap flexibility, suggests his long-term place in Detroit may be tenuous as the franchise constructs its offseason roster. On the injury front, Detroit just made an emergency move to patch up their devastated secondary ahead of a crucial playoff push. According to NFL reporter Ian Rappaport, the Lions added safety Damontae Kazee to the practice squad following Brian Branch's season-ending torn Achilles. Now 32, Kazee has accumulated 111 NFL appearances since his 2017 rookie campaign, and Detroit reportedly intends to elevate him to the active roster promptly to address the safety shortage. Kazee entered the league as a 2017 draft selection by the Atlanta Falcons and remained there through 2020. After departing Atlanta, he spent time with Dallas, Pittsburgh, and most recently Cleveland, establishing himself as a versatile defensive back and special teams asset. Kazee's finest statistical season arrived in 2018 when he recorded 7 interceptions, 10 passes defended, and 82 tackles. Over the 7 years since that standout campaign, he's accumulated 10 interceptions, evidence that he retains the capacity to generate turnovers when utilized appropriately. Detroit's safety position has suffered heavy attrition this season. Kirby Joseph has been out since Week 6 with a knee issue. Branch sustained a torn Achilles, and Thomas Harper is managing a concussion. These absences position Kazee as a logical candidate for promotion to the 53-man roster by week's end. Though Kazee dressed for 4 games with Cleveland this season, he did not register defensive snaps for the Browns. Combined with the fact that he started only 1 game with Pittsburgh during the 2024 season, a considerable stretch has passed since he logged consistent and meaningful NFL playing time. Detroit will dedicate the week to installing the playbook and bringing him up to speed, hoping he can be available when the Lions travel to Los Angeles to face the Rams. Kazee excelled at San Diego State in the mid-2010s, and Detroit is banking on a return to that competitive instinct. At 32, he's seeking renewed footing in his professional journey, and the Lions are wagering that a combination of experience and past playmaking capability can deliver immediate stabilizing impact. Beyond the immediate roster fixes, analysts are floating a blockbuster trade idea that could transform Detroit's entire trajectory. In March 2021, the Rams dispatched Jared Goff along with multiple first-round selections in 2022 and 2023 and a 2021 second-round pick to Detroit in exchange for Matthew Stafford. Stafford promptly captured a Super Bowl, while Goff became the foundation of a Lions resurgence that transformed both his career and the franchise's identity. Now consider that framework reversed. Instead of exporting a quarterback, a contender imports one, and Jalen Hurts becomes the transformative centerpiece for the NFC North's most promising team. Philadelphia's late-season collapse has converted a promising trajectory into a worrying descent. The Eagles have lost 3 consecutive games and stand at 8-5, and Hurts' uneven performances have become a central narrative, punctuated by 5 turnovers, 4 interceptions, and 0 touchdowns in the Week 14 overtime defeat to the Los Angeles Chargers. That sequence renders even established stars discussable in trade frameworks. On Yahoo Sports' Inside Coverage podcast, hosted by Andrew Siciliano, Charles Robinson, and Frank Schwab, commentators sketched an off-season scenario that redirects Hurts north rather than south. Their proposal centers on the NFC North, specifically the Lions, highlighting Detroit's contending roster, available draft capital, an aggressive coaching presence that could unlock more from Hurts' physical gifts, and a fan base hungry for a seismic upgrade. A hypothetical deal on the scale of the Goff-Stafford exchange would likely require substantial compensation, perhaps first and second round assets, but the potential return is considerable. Inserting a top-tier playmaker into Dan Campbell's intensity, surrounding him with an effective ground game to mitigate errors, and placing him within a culture that values toughness and commitment. Hurts signed a 5-year, $255 million extension prior to the 2023 season. That contract represents a significant asset to absorb, but certain contenders and fan bases are prepared to invest heavily to circumvent a rebuild. Inside coverage captured the dynamic. Someone always wants a quarterback. Someone always needs a quarterback. The Detroit Lions in this case. I do think it is time. Listen, he won a Super Bowl last year. He's not a bum. He's a good player. But clearly, he's hit a wall. Hurts has got a month to turn it around. He does. But I do think you need to start asking the question and looking at the contract and asking, is there an exit strategy here? And who would want him next year? A persistent criticism of Hurts concerns how his demeanor registers during adversity, composed and controlled when circumstances align, yet occasionally strangely detached when teammates require visible emotional leadership. The Ringer's Chris Ryan characterized it as performative leadership, a quality that resonates during winning stretches but frustrates when situations deteriorate. Fans and teammates occasionally desire more outward intensity in the most challenging moments. This tension fuels the Lions-specific question that will dominate offseason conversations. Might Dan Campbell, a coach renowned for emotional authenticity and sideline intensity, draw out a different, more visceral iteration of Hurts? For Detroit supporters seeking an immediate leap, the notion of Campbell molding Hurts into a supremely driven field general is compelling. It represents the kind of aggressive gamble that could elevate the Lions from playoff hopeful to Super Bowl contender in a single offseason. Would you want to see the Lions trade for Jalen Hurts, or should they stick with Jared Goff? Do you believe Dan Campbell could unlock a better version of Hurts than what we've seen in Philadelphia? Is giving up multiple first-round picks for Hurts worth the risk, or would that be a franchise-altering mistake? Leave your analysis in the comments.